1. It was 4 a.m. when the headlights of the newspaper delivery man creeped up to my gate. I was already groaning to the anticipation of being graced by this creep's presence. See, I was one of those tiny female guards who get laughed at when they tell people what my job was. But you're so tiny. Well, this chair doesn't have a must be this tall to ride sign. I don't know how it is for you guys out there, but something about small female graveshift just made for unsavory repeat interactions. One being a neighboring roving guard and ex-cop who would hold me hostage with boring chit-chat because he was infatuated with me, despite being married, but that's a long tale. This time, the newspaper delivery man decided I was absolutely going to accept a newspaper. I had always politely declined them because it would be a waste to give one to me. I had already opened the gate for him before his car came to a stop, and was mid-wave when he stopped and offered another newspaper. You might be thinking it'd be better to just accept it and be done with it, but his next little maneuver shows you why it's important to listen to your gut feeling, especially when someone tries to convince you otherwise. He held the newspaper out of the tiny slit he had decided to open his window to. The paper was barely sticking out. He kept saying to take the newspaper. He was ordering me while slowly pulling the newspaper back in a touch. Absolutely not. I turned and closed my shack door on him while emphasizing I don't want one. He reacted by opening the window more to throw the newspaper at the closed door as hard as he could, and then took off to do his rounds. Told my boss a couple hours later and showed him the footage. I really felt like this guy was trying to bait me to grab the newspaper so he could grab hold of my arm and kidnap me. The small window gap was being used like a snare. My boss really came through here because he got that guy rerouted after calling his employer to complain. Never saw him again. I'm out of the security field, but I will always think of it being there when I needed to finish homework, and I'll shake my fist and flip the bird at all those creeps out there. 2. So I work classified security at a major defense contractor company that shall not be named. I repeat, the company works for government projects which are mostly classified secret and even top secret. So this is not a public-facing thing. I do not work directly for this company, but as a subcontractor hired by the company to handle physical security 24/7. But I do work at this company location, as I have the proper clearance and training to do so. People from the public cannot just wander in without an approved visit via request, which is also a whole process. You need a background check just to be authorized to scrub the toilets here. The door won't even open for you if you don't have one of our specially coded badges. And if you call, you'd better know the exact information of the specific individual you are trying to reach, because we won't help you find someone, and we won't transfer your call to that person. We won't even tell you if they work here at all. We'll give them your information so they can decide if they want to talk to you, and often they don't. Unfortunately, there isn't a receptionist desk for calls to go to, so all calls to the building instead go directly to the security desk. This leads to a weird situation where if anyone Googles the company's contact number, their call goes to my security desk. My legitimate calls are either the security alarm monitoring company telling me a sensor has gone off, an employee needing assistance, or someone trying to get hold of a certain employee. Other calls, like people seeking career information, employment verification, or plain wrong numbers. The latter category are not my job to deal with, but as a courtesy, I try to direct them to the appropriate party as best I can, while trying to finish the call as fast as possible. I have to keep the line clear for the aforementioned alarm calls. I will clarify that my job is not customer service. Well, it is, but my customer is the company itself, not members of the public. So anyway, ring ring. I answer the phone and say, Company X, this is Officer Masquidoo speaking. How may I help you? The guy on the other side says to me, am I speaking to a Company X employee or a third-party call center? Which is a new one to me. Neither. You've reached the security desk. He immediately launches into a bit of a spiel. I just want to know when your company plans to transition to biomed technologies, blah blah blah. And then he rattles off a bunch of stuff the company is currently involved in, like missile defense, etc. Now I thought maybe he was someone trying to angle for a job or internship or something. Sometimes people are so eager to get some kind of foot in the door that they'll just try to flex everything they know on whoever they can. even though this company does not do any career support over the phone, and certainly not the security phone. As this man never seems to take a breath to breathe, I eventually just cut him off. The security desk does not have that information, sir. If you're looking for information, I suggest the company website. Now, if you're trying to reach a point of contact here, I can direct your call if you can provide me a name. Then he threw me a weird curveball I wasn't expecting. You know that by working there you're complicit in murder? He seemed like he was going to go on more, but I had had enough. I interrupted him before he could continue and said in the most pleasant tone, "I don't give a shit." There was a moment of blissful silence on the other end, and I did not wait for a recovery. "Have a nice day, goodbye," and I hung up. Now, was my language nice? Well, no, perhaps not, but as my quote goes, I don't give a shit. See, I work classified security, not the mall. My job is to stop the public from having access to the building or contact with the people inside. I screen calls. I never even had to take his call in the first place, and only answered as a courtesy. I don't owe anyone help, it does not have legitimate business, and I certainly don't owe anyone a debate. I'm sure not interested in talking to some nutter. He called me back immediately. The caller ID only said wireless caller and no name, but did not display the phone number. It wasn't even from our state. No doubt the guy wanted to speak to my manager. I wouldn't have transferred him to my manager even if he was actually in that day. Part of my job is to actually stop bad calls from getting through to anyone at all, not to pass them off to someone else, so I rejected the call. I've dealt with angry people demanding my manager before, often because they're convinced they've actually dialed Walmart, and I'm just lying that it's a wrong number for some reason. But this guy actually knew he was calling Company X, so I can't imagine why he'd expect the "I want to speak to your manager" routine to work with us murderers, like this is effing Dairy Queen. I think that would be the end of it, but no, he called back again, and again, and again. I rejected every call. This went on for several minutes without this smooth-brained individual getting the hint. If I didn't answer the last dozen times, why would I now? A random employee wandered by, and just making conversation, I told the employee what was going on, all the while rejecting still more calls from the same guy. Then the employee got a grin on his face and decided it would be fun to pretend to be my manager. I coached him how to answer like a guard, and he did so. I don't know what the guy on the other end said, but the employee responded, "Well, that isn't nice. Listen here, your information has been reported, and law enforcement is on their way to you as we speak," and hung up again. I'm still laughing whenever I think of it. Obviously, what the employee said is not true in any way. We don't have that kind of power. We just thought it was fun to mess with the guy a bit. We were hoping that would scare the guy to quit calling, but no such luck. More calls kept coming through and even did interfere with a legitimate call from our alarm company. The alarm company eventually called us on our secondary line. Luckily, it was just a communications check. Even though I was not answering these calls, the distraction of having to check and manually reject each call was getting to be a pain, not to mention really cutting into my murder quota for the day. Eventually, a PSR and the FSO got involved. When I told them what was up, including what I said, they had a good laugh, and the FSO got to work seeing if they could get the phone number blocked. In all, the man called me 53 times in the span of about 20 minutes. I think he needs a hobby. I still don't know what exactly he expected to accomplish. Was I supposed to say, "Wow, I never knew that. Thank you, random stranger, for informing me that the defense company I work for is indeed a defense company. I'll just quit my job right this second and go be homeless and live off pine cones." My guess is he was trying to get some kind of story where he totally owns some jackbooted imperialist goon. I expect to find this guy's tale in some little blog somewhere, or possibly even a recording on TikTok. As it is, several employees have taken to cheerfully greet each other with, "Hey, what's up, murderer?" as they pass in the halls, just in case anyone was curious how much impact this concerned citizen's call had on one of the biggest aerospace companies in the world. 3. I was loss prevention for a big department store in Florida. One day I was coming out of the restroom and noticed a guy in the shoe department. Now, this is Florida, and 90% of the time it's hot as hell, you know? This guy was wearing a leather jacket and was crouched down. Me, being my curious self, went back to the camera room and started watching him. I watched as he stuffed a pair of shoes in the jacket, then proceeded to start heading to the exit. This particular store had rules that you couldn't stop the suspect while still in the store, that we had to give the customer every opportunity to pay. I approached him at the front doors and he took off running. We are not supposed to chase them, so I went back inside and called the police. There was also a Kmart next door to this store. I called their security and gave them the suspect's description. I got a call from them not too long after. They told me he had gone into the restroom and had turned his sweatpants inside out. I walked down to the store to that area he was last seen. We practically ran into each other as I rounded a corner. I looked at him and said, "Hey, remember me?" That boy took off running, so I started chasing after him. Then come some red Kmart vest employees chasing along also. What fun. He got about halfway across the store before he ran into a guy who just happened to be an off-duty cop. I was a dispatcher for 10 years and he was a co-worker. So the police come down to Kmart and escorted the suspect back to my store. The shoes were not on him, of course. While he was in the office with me and the officer, I started writing up a report. Meanwhile, the K9 was searching the area outside the store and found the shoes hidden in some bushes. Good boy. I finished the report while the officers were still there, and one of them told me I wrote better reports than most of the officers. Win-win for me. 4. The following is a Kevin story, but also a security story. Kevin 1 I nicknamed Conman because he looked like Nick from Left 4 Dead 2, had no experience with security work, and was a parole officer in San Diego. Why he was working in a hospital so far from California? Why he is working in a hospital so far from California? Why he is my new supervisor? And why is he chain-smoking in the closed parking garage? Kevin 1 was a huge pothead. He smoked cannabis all day, including at work, on camera in the parking garage. My boss made me train him and get him all situated, and we got a call for an argumentative patient. It could be known as a code gray, but only if they throw a punch or a chair, etc. I was explaining to Kevin 1, "We are not cops, we are just making a presence and will offer to help them in any way. This is a hospital, the person might be in pain or something, be respectful and professional." As soon as the elevator door opened, the older, probably mid-70s man was holding his wrist and saying, "Been here 3 hours, where's Doctor Not Kevin? My arm, my damn arm! Get off your ass and help me!" Kevin 1 replied, "I'll throw you out of this hospital if you don't check your attitude." I sent Kevin 1 away with a hiss and helped the guy. He was just on the wrong floor. Kevin 1 was fired after about 5 months. Turns out he stopped smoking weed trying to piss clean for a new job and got irritated quickly. And the charge nurse went to tell him something and he flew off the handle and lost his shit. Kevin 2 was an odd case. I feel like he could have gotten away with murder because he almost did. Kevin 2 was about 18 and got the job right out of high school. Now his entire family, mom, dad, and siblings would come and drop him off and make sure he looked clean enough for his shift. Kevin 2 barely spoke with me. I would ask a question and he would just stare in my direction, through my body, like he couldn't see me. I later found out he just hates white people. Called me chunky milk once and I laughed my ass off. Kevin 2 did nothing. He would wait for our supervisor, Kevin 1, to leave and immediately put his headphones in and start watching whatever on his phone. I would catch him sitting in chairs and empty waiting areas on his phone and camera while he was supposed to be patrolling. If anyone asked Kevin 2 a question, he would call me to return to the office about every little thing. Called me back about where check-in for urgent care was. It was literally 5 feet across the hallway. Now the almost killing a guy part? I was on patrol in the parking garage collecting wheelchairs. It was about 8 p.m. or so. I got a call from my friend who worked the desk at urgent care telling me to come over to her. I rush back and find the code team taking a guy in on a stretcher. I talk to my friend to get some information about what is going on. A guy clutching his chest knocked on our window and tried to get Kevin 2's attention, who was busy looking at a corner, sniffing his phone, what it looked like on camera. Then the guy came up to the door before collapsing in front of urgent care and our office. I called my boss and told him my side of the story and that I was on patrol, etc. Stay here, let me come over to your location. Quick facts about my boss. He looks just like Tom Selleck from Blue Bloods, mustache and all. Scariest specimen of man I've ever seen. Boss walks in and tells me to go do a patrol. He'll radio me back when he's done. An hour goes by, I get the call, and when I return, Kevin 2 is nowhere to be found. I never saw him again. I imagine he was consumed by my boss's powerful mustache. Kevin 3. I nicknamed Gym Bag, because he smelled like an old gym bag, sweaty socks and jock straps. He didn't really do anything wrong, he just had a question about everything every day, even if I answered it before. Nice enough guy, but he really messed up when he missed a few shifts and swore at some patients for smoking on property. Kevina 1 came in her first day drunk and started flirting with Kevin 1. Didn't even make it to lunch before she got fired. Kevin 4 and I were actually good friends. He was very closed-minded, but we agreed on enough things to make a friendship. We worked nights for a strong year until he smoked weed close enough to the building to trigger the fire alarm. The fire chief, my boss, supervisor, dean of medicine, and a lot of nurse staff, including myself, watched him explain the fire while stopping to giggle and repeat himself, go on tangents and so on. My boss knew he was high. Hell, we all did. He was fired on the spot. And that concludes all my Kevin stories. Hope you enjoyed, and who was your favorite? 5. So a little preface here, I'm a 24-year-old female who works on a security team for a winery in Southern California. This winery typically holds 2 or 3 country concerts per year. We never hire outside security, we just use the winery security, which is made up of about 5 guards, 3 guys and 2 girls. Once in a while, they will throw a couple of barbacks in there who, by the way, are not trained at all, but the reasoning for this is that our boss, the CEO, hates security and doesn't want them even though he needs them. Anyways, this was a concert night last summer, where our winery was the venue for an Eli Young band concert. We finally got most of the people out of the venue, and except for a few stragglers that I was slowly herding out the front door, when I suddenly saw a woman lying on the ground with a bunch of people around her. I go up and ask, "Are you lying on the ground voluntarily, or are you hurt?" She replies with attitude,
"No, I'm just here because I can be."
So I told her, "Actually no, I need you to get up and head out now." So she stands up and starts backing up. I could see it all happen before my eyes so slowly but so fast at the same time. As she takes one step back and loses her balance, she starts falling and smacks her head on a rock since our parking lot isn't paved. Also, I should mention she was belligerently drunk. Anyways, she knocks out and I run over to her as fast as I could, and I held her head steady on the ground and make sure not to move her since I had no idea what kind of damage had been done. And I immediately call my boss over the radio to rush to the scene as fast as possible. As I was waiting for him, about 5 girls run up who claimed that they were nurses, who were also all hammered, and I told them I was not letting any of them try to touch her or operate her unless they were completely 100% sober, otherwise they were useless to me. That's when Fred, her husband, rushes over like a bull.
"You got her, you idiot. You don't know you're dying,"
in a very slurred, intoxicated manner.
"I'm the Chief Battalion of Flameyville Fire Department."
I said, "Okay, and?"
"I'm also her husband."
Then he shoves me out of the way. By this time my boss had arrived and called our local fire department and paramedics to the scene. So we waited for them as he stood over his wife like a wolf standing over a deer. Finally, the fire department shows up. I hear him whisper to his wife,
"Watch me light up all these guys' asses."
Then out comes about 4 firemen. Fred, the husband, immediately beelines to the firemen and cutting me off and my boss off and says,
"I want to know who the captain and the medic is right now."
And so they made themselves known to him.
"Okay, here's what's gonna happen. We're gonna load her up in the truck and take her to her whole hospital in the county, where I'm the Chief Battalion of the Fire Department."
They kind of looked at him and smirked. And the medic says, "If you are a fireman, then you know we only have specific hospitals we can take her to in our specific county. So here's your options. Take them or leave them." Fred, the husband, looked at them blankly and goes,
"Well, shit, you are all sure gonna be in trouble."
The medic ignored him and went over to his wife and started trying to assess her injuries. Fred tried to knock him out of the way like he was playing football or something, and that's when the medic gets pissed. And that's when my bosses decide to step in and put him in an arm lock. He started freaking out, obviously. Time goes on, and he eventually had bitched and moaned so much that everyone there was pretty much done with him and his wife, and they declined medical attention. So he ended up drunk driving and taking his wife to the hospital on his own. Don't worry, we reported him to the police and his department. He had to come back and apologize to everyone for his bad behavior. Bad fireman. Bad. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Insecurity, Episode 5. And thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. Please hit the like button before you go, thank you very much. Alright, where are we? I think this goes up on Thursday originally. Sometime in July. 14th of July. Yeah, there we go. Right, let's see. No special shout-outs that I'm aware of today, so let's just jump right on into Hellfreezer's question of the day. Preference, live music versus just listening to music at home. Now, it's a very different experience, I am aware, but given that I don't really like being out in public, or certainly being in among large crowds, I much prefer the coziness and comfort of listening or watching live music, or just music in general at home. Do you have a preference? If so, what is it and why? And let me know in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.